The following contains naughty words like boobs, bottom, and moist. This program is for mature and immature audiences. Listener discretion advised. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Lusty Literature. I'm Julia Robertson. Today we're going to talk about the mononymous, albeit never the monogamous writer Colette. So famous in her homeland of France that when Colette died there in the 1950s, she was honoured to a state funeral. Colette's passionate prose, along with her passionate personal life, making her one of a kind. For example, when Colette worked as a nude musical performer at Paris's famed Moulin Rouge club, one night she apparently sparked a near-audience riot when she and her then real-life lover, who happened to be the niece of Emperor Napoleon the Third, simulated on-stage realistic sex with one another. Ooh la la. Albeit, perhaps it was less graphic than the high-definition orgies one sees on Game of Thrones.
Oh, please, don't impale me with your big sword. You said you liked my big sword.
Colette's most famous book was arguably one of her novellas, Gigi, published in 1944 and later adapted into a movie starring Leslie Caron, that went on to win a then record haul of 9 Oscars. Gigi was also adapted into a Broadway show that once starred Audrey Hepburn. But today, instead of focusing on Gigi, we're going to talk about Cheri, written prior to Gigi, albeit its movie adaptation didn't come until later. Cheri then starring Michelle Pfeiffer as its lusty courtesan lead. But before we talk more about the novel, let's talk more about the author. Colette was born Sidonie Gabrielle Colette in the 1870s in the picturesque village of Saint-Sauveur-en-Puisay, located just over 100 miles southeast of Paris. Yet for all Colette's childhood comforts, her countryside home a veritable mansion with tall ceilings, ample rooms, and huge windows upon which you could look out and see deer-roamed fields, she wanted to live in the city. Colette craving adventure and escape from her maman, whom purportedly she found to be overbearing and neurotic. When Colette turned 20, she got her wish, marrying Henri Gautier-Vallard, an older, already established writer who was known in Paris for hammering and screwing. No, I don't mean he put up shelves. Instead, Henri had a familiar face, or should I say had a familiar cock at the city's S&M clubs. Henri then wasting no time in introducing his petite curly-haired bride to his favourite pastime. Colette's marriage to Henri lasted for her an unlucky 13 years before they separated. But it can be argued that if not for Henri, Colette may never have become such a hugely successful writer. Henri apparently having encouraged his wife to try her hand at writing saucy tales, which she did. Henri then publishing her semi-autobiographical stories about a young woman discovering her sensuality in the countryside under his own pen name of Willie, an apt pseudonym for a man who seemed so fond of his. Although, perhaps Henri's pseudonym should have been Arse, because when the couple did divorce, Henri kept all royalties to Colette's early books. Colette's second marriage was to another Henri Juvenal, a powerful man, editor-in-chief of the daily newspaper Le Matin. When the two wed, Henri Juvenal already had a son from his previous marriage. And it wasn't until Colette was a perimenopausal age 47 that she met her stepson Bertrand, who'd just turned 16. Colette then famously seducing her stepson with the words, "Il est temps tu deviens homme." It's time you became a man. By which she did not mean he was to learn how to drive. Instead, she wanted her stepson to sail his bateau up her Seine in a scene more evocative of TV's MILF Manor. This week on MILF Manor.
You can call me Mama. Miss Kennedy, I can't stay. I've got to go back to Eagle Scouts.
Colette's affair with her stepson lasted years, until Henri found out along with the rest of Paris. Colette's third husband was called Maurice. The novel Cheri tells the tale of a 49-year-old courtesan, Léa de Lanval, who for the past 6 years has been teaching the art of l'amour to Fred Pelou, nicknamed Cheri, ever since he was a teen. Now, though, their relationship seems threatened, as Cheri's maman, a former courtesan herself, now wants Cheri to settle down with a nice young virgin, whom, thoughtfully, Maman has already selected. Considering that the book Cheri pertains to an age gap relationship, you may be thinking, is the novel Cheri semi-autobiographical, considering that many of Colette's early books were? But in this case, it appears not. Because when Colette met Bertrand in 1920, chapters of Cheri had already been published, albeit the book had yet to be printed in its entirety. And now for our first excerpt. Yay! That takes place at the start of the book inside of Léa's boudoir, after one of her other male friends has gifted her a pearl necklace, not a euphemism, for her birthday. A pearl necklace that Cheri is currently fingering. Not a euphemism. Léa, Cheri said, let me keep it. Let me keep your pearl necklace. Léa, do you hear me? Let me keep your pearls. No answer came from the huge brass bed that glimmered in the shadows of the room like a coat of mail. Cheri went on. Léa, why won't you let me keep your necklace? It suits me every bit as much as you, even better. At the sound of the necklace's clasp snapping, Léa's thin-wristed arms lifted on high her two lazy hands from out of the bed's lace sheets. Leave it, Cheri, she said. You've played with that necklace long enough. It amuses me, he said. What, are you afraid I'll steal it? Cheri danced away from her in front of the sun-drenched pink curtains like a graceful demon, until he then pranced back toward the bed in his white silk pajamas and white Moorish slippers. Léa said, I'm not afraid, but you'll wear out that necklace's thread and those pearls are heavy. They certainly are, he said. Whomever gave you these never made light of you. Cheri then turned to admire himself in the boudoir's mirror, his reflection revealing a very good-looking, very youthful young man. Neither too tall nor too short, his hair bluish with the sheen of a blackbird's plumage, and the whites of his teeth and the pearls of the necklace gleaming in the rosy glow of the room. Cheri then unbuttoned his pajama shirt, displaying his hard, darkish chest that curved like a shield. "Take off that necklace," Leia said seductively. "Do you hear me?" Cheri laughed softly and stood motionless. "I heard you," he said. "But I know you. You still think I'll steal it?" Cheri then bounded over to the edge of the bed and perched himself on its side. He said, "It's idiotic that a man should give a woman, 50 pearls? 49, Leia said. 49, Cheri said. One per birthday, as if I hadn't counted. Whereas when women gift a man a pearl, it might only be one for, say, a tie-pin or two for cufflinks. But please, don't you say this necklace looks bad on me." "You'd never believe it," Leia said. "But Cheri, please. You must learn to laugh without crinkling your nose, or it'll be covered with wrinkles." Cheri stopped laughing and drew the fold of skin beneath his chin before forcing the skin on his forehead to relax. The lovers now glowering at each other in open hostility. Leia in bed, leaning on her elbow in her flurry of frills and lace. And Cheri on the bed's edge thinking, "Who's she to talk her wrinkles to me?" And now for our second excerpt, that occurs near the book's end. Spoiler: Cheri has since married that young lady, only to continue to pine for Leia, Cheri wishing to erect his Eiffel Tower on her Champ de Mars. In this excerpt, the former lovers reconnect inside of Leia's boudoir upon Leia's return from vacation. A vacation in which she too failed to get over the thought of her lover. In particular, the image of his crusty baguette. Enjoy. "I dare you to say it," Cheri blurted, his eyes aflame with desire and distress. "That you found yourself a lover." "No," Leia replied to him from the boudoir chaise longue, her voice calm but her heart thundering as her radiant former lover moved toward her and gripped her shoulders. Before his handsome young face wore down, Leia told him, "I have no lover. I love you." Cheri released his grip and with an urgency sped off his dinner jacket and waistcoat and whistled his tie through the air till it fell around the marble bust of Leia that perched on her mantelpiece. He stood before her half naked, Leia gulping at the sight of his hard chest. From the chaise longue, her saying, "Do you really want to? Do you?" Cheri couldn't answer. His tongue thick with desire, his imagination awhirl with all-consuming thoughts of taking her again. Leia then, like a good mistress serving her young lover with devout attention and solicitude, whilst anticipating a sort of terror as the moment of orgasm approached. The moment when, as she held him fast between her strong knees, she uttered a feeble cry before floundering in the abyss near death in which love emerges pale. The two remained enfolded in a close embrace after the act, no words disturbing them as they returned slowly to life. Leia panting softly due to his weight atop her, while Cheri, eyes closed, rested his head on sheets until the lightning of his pleasure had waned and passed. Leia's free hand clung to his wrist. She thought, "He's asleep," as she squeezed it, her knees crushed by one of his as she also pondered how well she knew that knee in its lovely shape, until at the level of her heart she sensed the beating of another. "He's here," she whispered to herself, and that sense of security surrounded her. "He's here forever, away from his silly little wife and his home, and he's come back to me. And who will take him now?" But as she withdrew her left arm that prickled with pins and needles, she then glanced at Cheri, discovering him awake, the black wings of his lashes fluttering and the whites of his eyes apparent. "You're not asleep," she said. He stretched out his hand toward the bedside lamp and turned it on. "Noon," he said sleepily, the term of endearment sometimes meaning nanny, as the lamp's rosy light flooded the big bed, revealing quilted folds and valleys in the eiderdown. Cheri, stretching his body fully and surveying the field of his victory with a sense of peace, said, "But you're not asleep either." Leia leaned on one elbow beside him and swept back the rebellious locks from his sweaty forehead as the enamel clock on the mantelpiece struck. Cheri sat up. "What time is it?" "I don't know," Leia said. "What difference can it make to us?" "Oh, I just asked," he said, whilst outside on the street a milk cart clinked and tinkled its carillon. Cheri then looked back upon Leia, whereupon he suddenly stared at her with such intensity in this cold, bright, new light of dawn, an undecipherable thought appearing in his eyes as he rose up from the sheets. Broad-shouldered, slim-waisted, Leia enjoying the sight of him naked. "Ah, you," she sighed. Cheri, unsmiling, said, "Tell me, Nanoon." "What, my pretty?" He hesitated and shivered. "How will you manage about?" "Oh, I'm tired." "Don't worry," Leia said, pulling Cheri's drowsy head back toward the pillows. "Go back to sleep." Thank you for listening to today's Lusty Literature, in which we discovered that when bedding a much younger man, it might be wise to keep the lights off and keep the curtains closed. But sadly, this marks the end of this season. Before I say goodbye, 3 shout-outs. To my parents, who bizarrely encouraged me to do this. I love you both. To Tamsin Collison at RADA for sharing with me her love of Royster Doyster John Donne. Thank you. And to Harlan Coben for the much-needed motivational kick up the arse. You, sir, are a maestro. Until next time, goodbye.